A young engineer vanished without a trace, and 10 years later, he was the one who sent the first signal back. Malik Warren, a promising young black engineer, was once considered a rising star in Savannah, Georgia's manufacturing industry. At just 24, he became the youngest person to oversee a high-tech aerospace component line at one of the city's largest plants. Then one morning, he didn't show up for work. No calls, no texts. His phone was off. No security footage ever showed him leaving his home. No witnesses. No trace. Within 48 hours. The case was quietly classified as voluntary adult disappearance. The file was closed. His family made calls, knocked on doors, pleaded for help, but the city moved on. As if Malik had never existed. 10 years passed. No leads, no answers. Until one night when a TikTok video surfaced, and in the background was Malik's face. Malik Warren grew up on the south side of Savannah, in a neighborhood where ceiling fans hummed through the heavy summer heat and people called each other by nicknames, not last names. His family was unremarkable on paper, a modest 3-bedroom house with a faded wooden fence and a backyard just big enough for tomato plants. But in that quiet life, Malik was the exception. Even as a child, he showed rare patience, while other kids played video games. Malik was the one pulling apart the controller just to understand how it transmitted a signal. At 12, he built an automatic sprinkler system for his mom's garden, not to impress anyone, but because, as he said, it'll give Mom 10 more minutes of sleep. When a car accident took both his parents when Malik was 17, he became the family's anchor. His sister, Nia, a young nurse with a newborn, was struggling to hold things together. Without being asked, Malik took a semester off school and worked part-time at a nearby machine shop to help cover bills. That's just who he was, quiet, steady, always putting others first. He returned to school a year later, earned a scholarship to study engineering at Savannah Tech, and graduated as the only student in his class to complete an AI-powered robotic surveillance project, a project that got him hired straight into a prestigious aerospace manufacturing plant. Coworkers described him as the first one in, last one out. He never complained, never argued. Every morning at 7 a.m., he showed up in his worn hard hat, coffee thermos in hand. His lunch was always a homemade sandwich, and during breaks, he often helped fix broken laptops for the team. But behind that calm exterior was a mind always working. He scribbled notes on the back of his lunchbox, technical formulas, circuit sketches, energy-saving designs. Once, a supervisor asked, "Why don't you send this stuff to the R&D team?" Malik just smiled, "I'm not ready for anyone to read it yet." There was something in Malik, a part of him always held back, a deeply private world. Even Nia didn't fully understand him, and one day, that mystery would become the first reason his disappearance made no sense. Every morning, Malik left the house at exactly 4:45 a.m., biking 3 blocks, crossing a steel bridge over a canal into the southern industrial zone. His route and rhythm were so precise that neighbors joked, if Malik's late, the earth must be stopped spinning. But for Malik, routine wasn't habit, it was principle. Precision belonged not only in machines, but in life, after work. He often stopped at the public library, not for books for the free printer. He printed CAD designs, taped them to his bedroom wall. His room didn't look like a typical young man's. No music posters, no TV, no game consoles. Just a large desk, overflowing with wires, components, robot limbs, and thick notebooks filled with perfectly aligned handwriting. His 6-year-old nephew used to sneak in and play with Malik's robotic arms. Malik never scolded him, just smiled and rewired it later. One day the boy asked, "Uncle Malik, what are you making?" Malik ruffled his hair and said, "Something to make people listen." That line, Nia would later remember with a heavy heart. She had always believed her brother was just a quiet engineer. But after he vanished, she started going through the notebooks, diagrams, and files he left behind. Some of it didn't make sense. There were strange designs with symbols that looked like encryption. Some pages were torn out. One USB, hidden behind a drawer, contained short recordings, fan noise, faint machinery hums, and a phrase repeated in a low voice. "System not secure. Don't send." At first, it just deepened her grief. But later, after the first clue appeared, those fragments began to mean something. There was one thing about Malik. Nia never knew his sleepless nights weren't always because of work. They were triggered by a sound, a strange frequency coming from a device he had built. It was no bigger than a palm. Something Malik called his third eye, a sensor, designed to detect subtle changes in heat and sound within the factory. He had told Nia it was a side project. In truth, he'd been placing these devices around his work area for months. No one knew what he was recording. In one notebook, entire pages repeated a single phrase: wave interference no match. Nia assumed it was just a draft formula, but after Malik vanished, she noticed something else. The old voice recorder he kept locked away was missing. Strangely, his personal hard drive had been wiped. No files, no logs, nothing. Except for one detail on the back of his laptop, covered by a faded plastic label, was a line of text: if something happens, don't look for me, look for why. Nia handed the sticker to police. They noted it but showed no surprise. They'd seen too many voluntary adult disappearances. But Nia knew her brother. Malik wouldn't walk away without a word. He wasn't that kind of man. Something bigger was happening, something he had either discovered or was running from. And when Nia began combing through temporary files on Malik's old laptop, one audio file had been automatically recovered. In it, Malik's voice, May 12th, system still blocked. No response. I'm not sure they know I know. His voice was calm, focused, but beneath the words was a quiet fear. And that date, May 12th, was the very last day Malik's name appeared on the plant's official time card system. On the morning of May 13th, Malik didn't show up for work, a break from routine that no one expected. When the plant manager called, his phone went straight to voicemail. By noon, a colleague named Chris noticed something odd. Malik's coffee mug was still on his desk, lid unopened. That was strange. Malik always brought that mug from home and only used it after plugging it into the safe outlet by his station. Supervisors called his home, and his sister, Nia, picked up. The moment she heard the concern in their voices, she knew something was wrong. Malik had never missed a shift, never failed to call ahead. She called his number, over and over. No answer. By nightfall, Nia drove to his apartment, an old unit between two industrial zones, where Malik lived alone. The front door was unlocked. Nothing inside was disturbed. Breakfast still sat in the fridge, untouched. His usual jacket hung by the door, but the steel-toe work boots, the kind he wore daily, were gone. On the desk sat a new schematic, pen still uncapped. Next to it, a note: check the source signal. The unease seeped into everything: the air, the corners, the unfinished thoughts on paper. Malik wasn't someone who left without a word. He didn't abandon projects. He didn't walk out without locking up. Nia filed a missing person report that night. When investigators arrived, they found nothing but silence. No signs of forced entry. No working security cameras in the area that night. No neighbors had seen him leave. The building's digital log showed his keycard opened the door at 4:46 a.m., the same time he usually left for work. After that, nothing. The case was categorized as voluntary disappearance, no signs of foul play, a label that often meant one thing: closed case. But Nia refused to let that be the end. She printed flyers, knocked on doors, contacted every one of Malik's friends. No one knew more. Some at the plant said Malik had been unusually quiet the last few weeks. He'd started bringing personal schematics to work, cutting his breaks short. A technician named Ramon remembered something else he once said: "There's something buried in the design code." At the time, no one paid attention. It sounded like a joke. But to Nia, it was the first breadcrumb proof that this wasn't just a disappearance. 2 days after reporting him missing, Nia returned to Malik's apartment, this time, not as a grieving sister, but as someone looking for answers. She sat at his desk for hours, flipping through notebooks, scanning every trace left behind. One note caught her eye, tucked behind a photo frame, scrawled handwriting: if signal alert drops, check sub-frequency 227.9. Nia didn't understand the tech, but she knew Malik didn't write things without reason. She sent the note to Jay, a former classmate of Malik's and fellow engineer. Jay recognized the frequency, an obscure internal band, once used at the same factory where they'd interned. Jay offered to help if she could find a matching device or data logs. Meanwhile, Nia revisited the plant. At the workstation Malik once managed, she stayed quiet, observing Elise, a supervisor who'd been close to Malik, recognized her and pulled her aside. She remembered Malik had recently flagged a new batch of control chips components from a third-party supplier. He believed the specs didn't match the software protocols. Worse, he suspected intentional tampering. When Malik raised concerns, the response was blunt. Don't touch it again. He never brought it up afterward. But Elise recalled a night in late April, seeing Malik alone in the system control room, eyes locked on the data log screen, a restricted tool only a handful could access. When she asked what he was doing, he said, just checking for inconsistencies. He left before his shift ended. Elise hadn't thought much of it until she heard Malik had vanished. She checked the access log. Malik's account had been locked out, his files wiped completely. That never happens, she told Nia, not after one missed day. That evening, Nia and Jay tried one last thing, removing Malik's old hard drive and booting it through a separate machine, hidden in a temp folder. They found one unencrypted file, a 6-second audio clip, electronic static, then Malik's voice, barely audible. If you're hearing this, it means they've found me. Nia froze. Her heart pounded. Malik had known. He'd seen it coming. But if he left willingly, why was his bank account still being accessed every Friday? That detail had gone unnoticed until now, each Friday at exactly 6:32 a.m. Someone had logged into Malik's account. No withdrawals, no transactions, just balance checks. From an IP address registered to a private network in suburban Raleigh, North Carolina, far from Savannah. Nia brought this to police. They refused to act. No evidence of a crime. They said, not enough to request ISP data. So Nia turned elsewhere. She reached out to an online forum where Malik had once shared research, a niche community of independent engineers, in a years-old thread. She found a username MW2279. One post, short, if the system overcycles, don't retreat, reset. The account went dark the same day Malik disappeared. Nia created a new account, sent a message to the forum admin, soon. She received a response not from the admin, but from an anonymous account. Stop digging. Hayes alive, but he's not an engineer anymore. The message disappeared after 60 seconds, but Nia had already taken a screenshot. She showed it to Jay. He studied the words, then said quietly, someone's controlling the narrative, or Malik's being forced to stay silent. That same week, Nia received a black envelope. No sender. Inside a nameless USB. She brought it to Jay. They opened it on an offline machine. One folder, digitization Warren test subject. Inside was a shaky video, filmed on what looked like a phone. A man in a clean room uniform, working inside what looked like a warehouse tech lab. He was assembling a large circuit board eerily similar to the designs Malik had once sketched. The camera didn't show his face, but the gestures, the way he scratched his left wrist, the way he adjusted his goggles. Nia knew it was Malik. Even in low light, there was no doubt. But why didn't he speak who filmed this? And why was it sent, just as police were preparing to close his file? If Malik disappeared willingly, why leave behind a trail when Nia presented the video to police? Their first reaction wasn't to investigate, it was to question its authenticity. It could be fake. Deepfakes are easy to make these days, one officer said. But Nia knew that look. She recognized every small gesture, things only family would notice. When she brought up the suspicious IP address from the Raleigh suburbs, the same one tied to the earlier bank logins, the police replied, "We don't have jurisdiction out of state unless there's a federal request." Meanwhile, something strange happened. Jay, the engineer friend, received a call from an unknown number. The caller didn't give a name. They said just one thing: stop helping her unless you want your access revoked. Immediately after, Jay's work email was shut down. All shared design files with Malik wiped from the cloud. It felt like someone was always one step ahead, deleting, intercepting, erasing every trace before Nia could reach it. She shifted her focus. She decided to speak to Jamal, Malik's best friend from high school. At first, Jamal avoided her, but when Nia tracked him down at the auto shop where he worked, he reluctantly agreed to talk. "I don't know anything," he kept repeating, but his eyes said otherwise. Nia showed him a frame from the video. He flinched. "You know something, don't you?" she asked, after a long pause. Jamal confessed 2 weeks before Malik vanished. He'd received a late-night call from him. Malik had been asking about someone they both used to know, a former engineer named Brenner, who had once been fired from the Savannah plant for leaking internal data. Malik sounded like he thought someone was watching him. Jamal said, "But I just thought he was being paranoid." Then came the part that made Nia freeze. Malik had sent Jamal a rough schematic. He asked him to keep it safe, in case he couldn't hold on to it anymore. Jamal never opened it. He just saved it to a USB drive and left it in the shop drawer. After some hesitation, he handed it to Nia. She and Jay opened it using an offline workstation. The schematic didn't resemble anything Jay had ever seen before. It appeared to be a closed-loop internal communication system using a rare dual encryption format typically seen in defense applications. The file was titled Silent Echo V1.3. The name Brenner, someone Nia had never heard before, was all too familiar to Jay. He recalled Brenner had once led a research project on ultra-high-frequency communication, but was suspended after being suspected of stealing proprietary encryption. After that, he vanished from the engineering world. No mention, no trace. But Jay found a clue, a post on an obscure tech blog posted anonymously 2 years earlier, breaking down the architecture of a non-traceable internal signal network. The writing style sounded a lot like Malik's. Jay was 90% sure it was him, but what shocked them was the only comment on the post. From a user named Bren System, "This network already exists. You know that, and you know who's using it." From that moment, Nia and Jay began tracking Brenner. They traced his past residence records, searched for patent filings, anything. One lead pointed to a suburban zone in Durham, North Carolina, a small private facility that had closed in 2020, but was recently re-registered under a different name, EtherCore Labs. They went there, a small warehouse, dust-covered walls, overgrown weeds. But Jay, using a handheld signal scanner, picked up elevated electromagnetic activity in the area, right in the 227.9 MHz range Malik had mentioned. That wasn't a coincidence. Nia recorded the area quietly as they were leaving. A black SUV pulled in behind them. 2 men stepped out, dressed in plain clothes. They said nothing, just watched. Jay grabbed Nia. "We need to go, now." That night, Nia received a message on Telegram from an anonymous account. "You don't understand what Malik touched. Don't try to rebuild it. He wasn't detained because he was dangerous. He was detained because he was too smart." The message auto-deleted in 15 seconds. Jay went pale. This isn't about tech anymore. This is about control. And Nia understood. Malik had stumbled onto something far beyond engineering, perhaps a covert comms network, or a surveillance system capable of operating off-grid. And if that was true, then his disappearance wasn't a mystery. It was a warning. 3 days after the encounter in Durham, Jay disappeared. No message, no goodbye. His phone rang, but no one picked up. Nia went to his apartment. The door was unlocked. His computer was still on. Every file gone, even the folder that held Silent Echo erased. Only one line remained on screen. Repeating in a loop, reboot failed. Protocol terminated. She reported him missing. But just like Malik, the case was filed under voluntary disappearance in desperation. Nia turned back to the original USB Jamal had given her. She discovered a system log Malik's access history on the plant's quality control network. Among the usual timestamps, one stood out. A Logan at 3:42 a.m. 3 days before Malik vanished at a workstation in an old test lab that had supposedly been shut down for nearly a year. Nia returned to the plant, this time with Elise's help. The lab was dark, dusty machines, unused for months, but on the wall fresh grease stains, a fingerprint, and one terminal still active. On screen a nameless program, no icon, no company tag, just one line, Echo Protocol Monitoring Live. Nia clicked. The display changed, showing waves of audio frequencies, like a live sonar map. Then suddenly a figure, blurry, shaky, Malik. He stood in a white room, assembling something, and turned to face the camera. He didn't speak, but his eyes looked directly into the lenses if he knew someone was watching. Then the screen went black. Elise grabbed Nia's arm. "If they find out we accessed this, you may not get another chance." But Nia didn't care. She now knew Malik was alive. He was being held or working for something nameless, unseen, and something was making sure every clue disappeared. That night, Nia returned home and checked the old email account she kept open in Malik's name. A new message, no sender, no subject. Just 3 words in the title, "Don't trust Jamal." Attached was a video file, surveillance footage, the last known moment Malik was seen leaving his home, and the final person speaking to him, Jamal, standing at Malik's door, whispering something. Then the 2 of them stepped out of frame together. Nia couldn't believe her eyes. In the footage, Jamal, the same man who denied knowing anything, was the last person seen with Malik before he disappeared. The clip came from the second-floor hallway camera at Malik's apartment complex. At exactly 4:46 a.m., matching the access log, timestamp, Malik stepped out of his door carrying a backpack and a small box. Its contents were unclear. Just before he exited the building, Jamal appeared from the stairwell. No work gear, just a baseball cap. They spoke no audio on the video, then walked out of frame together. What made Nia's blood run cold wasn't just Jamal's presence. It was Malik's calm demeanor, no panic, no urgency, like he knew Jamal would be there. But that directly contradicted Jamal's statement to police. He'd claimed he hadn't been in the area, and only learned of Malik's disappearance from authorities. Nia called Jamal, demanded a meeting. They met at a small cafe near the old factory. Jamal arrived late, visibly uneasy. Nia didn't waste time. She slid the footage across the table. Jamal turned pale. He didn't deny it, didn't lie, just let out a breath. "He asked me to." Jamal finally said after 30 seconds of silence. Malik said he discovered something he couldn't put through the system, said it might get shut down or worse. He didn't trust anyone in management, only me. According to Jamal, Malik had built a prototype device capable of recording, encrypting, and broadcasting secured data through an independent frequency. No internal network needed if it worked. It could bypass traditional firewalls and possibly expose hidden data the system was suppressing. Malik called it the Echo Core, and he feared it would never be allowed to exist. Jamal admitted he'd driven Malik to the North Carolina border that morning. He told me to stop near Brenner's old research site. Then he walked into the woods. I didn't follow. I just did what he asked. When Nia asked why he kept it secret all this time, Jamal dropped his head. I was scared. A week later, someone came to the shop asking about Malik. Didn't say who they were, but they knew I was his friend. They asked if he left anything, if I had any devices. They didn't wear badges, no IDs, but their eyes. They looked like they already knew I was lying. I haven't said a word since. The confession hit Nia like a punch to the chest. Malik hadn't vanished alone, and Jamal, though not guilty, had buried the truth too long. But what happened next would show Nia that the story went deeper than even she imagined. After the meeting, Nia couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying Jamal's words, the Echo Core, the trip to the woods, the strangers asking questions. The pieces were forming a map, but the center was still missing. The next morning, she returned to the plant where Malik once worked, this time, not to ask questions but to confront someone who might know more. She met Elise, the former supervisor, at a diner on the city's south side. After a moment of silence, Elise spoke first. "There's something I never told the police, because I was scared, and because I knew they didn't want to know." Elise said that weeks before Malik vanished, a group from an internal audit team came in to inspect the plant's encryption protocols. They also removed every backup server drive. No one on the engineering team knew where they came from. No one signed anything. They communicated only with upper leadership and disappeared after 2 days without a trace. After that, Malik became guarded. He changed all his passwords, disconnected his external drives, switched back to handwritten notes. Elise remembered him once saying, "If I stop coming to work, don't look for files, look for people." At the time, it sounded like a joke. Now, it felt like a warning. Nia asked Elise if she'd heard of EtherCore Labs, the shadowy name linked to the Durham facility. Elise looked around the diner, then nodded slowly. They're not a public company. They're a third-party contractor. Do classified engineering contracts. Who hires them? No one knows, but rumor is they once worked with a major tech joint venture got sued for violating AI ethics. Elise handed Nia an old photocopy, a list of devices removed by EtherCore from the plant. One name stood out: Echo Interface Prototype. Final note, transferred to partner no return. Nia felt her chest tighten. That was Malik's platform. Now gone. No records, no paperwork, no accountability, if Elise was right. Then not only had Malik vanished, so had the technology he'd built. Someone was determined to keep it in the dark. Permanently. 3 days later. Nia received a brown envelope. No postmark, no return address. Inside a non-disclosure agreement, the kind used in defense projects, signed by Malik Warren, dated 1 week before his disappearance. Attached was a grainy black and white photo, Malik standing beside 3 men in a conference room, behind them. A small sign read, EtherCore, Xiaoxi Phase 2. Nia's hands trembled. If this was real, it meant Malik had agreed to work with Thema, at least on paper. Why didn't he say anything? Why stage a disappearance? She showed the papers to Elise. Elise read them, then said only one thing. They don't hire people like Malik with contracts. They coerce. She explained that several engineers had been reassigned this way, signed agreements. No legal review, no end date. Once signed, they vanished from the org chart, not fired, not resigned, just erased. Elise called them ghost files. That night, Nia laid it all out: the footage of Jamal, the hard drive data, the EtherCore info, the ghost contract. The picture was becoming clear. Malik had found something in the system, something he believed could be exploited. He didn't trust leadership. He turned to Jamal for help to disappear. But when the information started to leak, someone decided Malik couldn't be left out in the open. They didn't silence him. They kept him. And worse, maybe they convinced him that disappearing was his only choice. Now, the biggest question wasn't who took Malik. It was, does Malik even want to come back? Because if the contract was real, maybe, in that final moment, he chose to work with them, to protect his family, to guard a secret, or because there was no way out. Nia couldn't say for sure. But she knew one thing: if he was still alive, he was sending a signal, not a cry for help, but a breadcrumb trail for someone patient enough and loyal enough to piece it all together. And she knew she was that someone. The last message from the anonymous account was just 4 chilling words. He made the choice. Nia read it again and again, unsure if it was real or fake, a warning or a threat, but it broke her in a way nothing else had all this time. She'd believed Malik was a victim caught in something bigger than himself, but what if he hadn't been forced? What if, from the beginning, he'd chosen this? What's harder to live with, knowing someone was taken, or realizing they chose to disappear? She began flipping through her old journals, her investigation notes, scattered clues, speculation. She wanted logic to prove that Malik had been a victim. But the more she read, the more a different picture emerged. A man who knew exactly what he was doing, who hid his designs, wiped his data, cut himself off from systems, and left behind no clear message. If he wanted her to find him, why not make it easier? Why did every breadcrumb lead to contradiction? She remembered the video, the way Malik stared straight into the lens. That wasn't the look of someone asking for help. It was the look of someone watching her, as if he was the one observing her, testing her, measuring whether she could piece it all together. The thought sent chills down her spine. What if everything she'd done from day one wasn't about saving Malik? What if she'd been walking through a maze he designed? She called Jamal. This time, not to question, but to verify. When you dropped Malik off near the North Carolina border, she asked, did he say anything else? Jamal hesitated, then admitted, there is something he told me never to say. But maybe now you should know. Malik had given Jamal a key small, tarnished, and said, if my sister finds her way to the end, let her open it herself. No address, no instructions, just the key, when Nia asked if he still had it. Jamal nodded, pulling it from the chain around his neck. "I've worn it every day." He said, "Didn't know when the right time would come." Nia took the key in her palm, her heart quietly breaking. Whatever hope she had of finding Malik as the brother she once knew was fading. What she was about to uncover might not be him anymore. It might be a version of him that had already chosen silence, chosen to step away, and left her behind in the wreckage. The silver key led her to an old storage locker on the outskirts of West Savannah Place, far from Malik's home or his workplace. Jamal had rented the unit years ago under a false name, M. Wallace, but the contact email matched one of Malik's secondary accounts, known only to the two of them. Inside the locker was a single item, an old laboratory laptop, designed to run encryption software independently, without any network connection, no papers, no photos, nothing else. When Nia powered it on, the screen flashed with strings of code, then loaded a bare interface with just one button, transmit signal. She hesitated, then clicked. The screen faded and a video began to play. No date, no background noise, just Malik Thinner, more severe sitting in a windowless white room. He looked into the camera, silent at first, then said, "If you're seeing this, it means you've come further than I ever thought you would." His voice was low, gravelly, but steady. "Not everyone should know. Not everyone should look. But you did, and I couldn't stop you." He paused, his eyes heavy. "I wasn't forced. I chose this. They didn't take me. They offered, and I accepted, because I believed at least once in my life I could build something no one had the right to destroy." He leaned slightly off screen, then returned. "I know you'll be angry, you'll feel betrayed, but if you've made it here, then you deserve at least part of the truth." The screen cut to black. A document began downloading automatically, Echo Core Specification V2.1. Nia opened it. It was the complete blueprint for the independent signal system Malik had developed, at the bottom of the file. A chilling note: "Activate only if no one else will speak the truth." Signed, Malik Warren, beneath the signature. One image, Malik, seated alone, facing away from the camera, in front of a control panel unlike anything publicly known, his face hidden, his old engineer's coat. The subtle tilt of his left shoulder, impossible to mistake. It was Malik, but no longer the man Nia once knew. He had become something else, part of a system, a choice, or a darkness even he might never escape. Nia closed the laptop. Her heart wasn't racing out of fear, but because, for the first time, she wasn't sure she wanted to find him anymore. Nia sat frozen for hours after the video ended, not just because of what Malik said, but how he said it, calm, prepared, as if he'd anticipated every step she would take. The world around her no longer felt familiar. She didn't know what to believe anymore. Was she searching for her brother? Or chasing the shadow of someone who used to be Malik? She took the hard drive to an old friend, Dan, electronics professor, who'd once mentored Malik for his scholarship. After skimming the blueprints, he looked up and said, "This shouldn't exist." According to him, Malik's design could allow someone to access microsignals across communication infrastructure without using any relay stations. In other words, a system of total freedom, untraceable, unstoppable, and in the wrong hands, a perfect tool for espionage, surveillance, even civilian manipulation. When he asked, "Did your brother know how dangerous this was?" Nia said nothing, because even she didn't know anymore, driving home. She stopped at a gas station just 3 miles from the old factory, as she paid. The screen behind the counter played a live stream from an underground tech TikTok channel. A masked figure spoke, clearly male, with a voice that bore a Georgia accent. He was describing a parallel wireless signal structure, exactly like Malik's design, on screen. One hashtag repeated over and over, "Yacha's Echo will not." Nia rushed home and checked Malik's backup email, the one she kept open, just in case. For the first time in nearly a year, there was a new message, no text, just an image attachment. Malik's familiar steel-toed work boots sitting beside a lake. Next to them, a small transmitter etched into the dirt. By hand, no one is missing. They just stopped believing in another path. And suddenly, Nia wasn't asking where Malik had gone. She was asking if Malik never disappeared, then who's rewriting the story for him? There was no press conference, no public statement, no reopened investigation, even as dozens of clues pointed to the continued existence of Malik, even as the system he developed was being discussed across underground tech forums, even as the image of his work boots beside the lake went viral with millions of views. Not a single authority formally acknowledged that he might still be alive. On paper, Malik Warren remains missing, adult whereabouts unknown. His name appears in no employment records, no medical system, no tax database. As if he had been erased, not just from life, but from society itself. And what struck Nia wasn't how bizarre that was, but how conveniently silent it all felt. A black engineer, from a quiet neighborhood, with no powerful connections, disappears without a sound. No public outcry, no demand for answers. The world, it seemed, had grown too used to people like Malik vanishing without so much as a ripple. Nia tried. She sent the files to 3 major news outlets. No response. One independent journalist scheduled an interview, then ghosted her. When she submitted the data to a whistleblower protection group, their website crashed and the email bounced back. No one stopped her directly, but door after door closed quietly, politely, like the entire system had learned to close its eyes when the truth got too close. One night, she got a call from an unknown number, no voice, just breathing, soft, rhythmic, then click. She didn't feel fear, she felt tired. Because maybe death isn't the scariest thing. Maybe the real tragedy is being rewritten, or worse endured. Maybe Malik is still out there working in a nameless organization. Maybe he escaped it all, living like a shadow. But even if he stood before her one day, would he still be her brother? Would he still believe he was Malik Warren? One quiet evening in late spring, Nia returned to the lake from that final photo, the one with the boots, the transmitter, and the hand-scrawled message in the dirt. There was no wind. The water lay still, as if it had never held a single secret beneath its surface. She stood there for a long time, not waiting, not hoping, just needing to be in the last place that held a trace of Malik. Or maybe, just the memory of who he had been. She pulled a small piece of paper from her pocket, a final line from Malik's notebook. Once lost in a drawer, everything has a frequency, even silence. She read it slowly, then burned the paper, letting the ash drift on the wind. Not to forget, but to send it like a signal she wasn't even sure anyone could hear. In that moment, she realized something deeper than any theory, any diagram. Any chase disappearance doesn't always mean being taken. Sometimes it's a choice. To survive, to protect something too fragile to expose, to keep a truth the world isn't ready for. Maybe Malik disappeared because he feared what his creation could become, or maybe he simply didn't want to live in a world where his voice would always be buried beneath power. Nia turned away from the lake. No tears, no conclusion, just this truth. She had followed his path to the very end, and even if she never found him, she had found what he was trying to say through code, through silence, through absence, a reminder. There are people, inventions, and souls that, if not protected, will be rewritten, not with lies, but with intentional forgetting. And sometimes all they need is someone to remember them exactly as they were. If you're still watching this far, maybe you felt what Nia came to understand, that sometimes truth isn't about who's right or wrong. It lives in the space between what's forgotten and what no one dares to remember. Malik Warren wasn't a lost genius. He wasn't just a victim of a hidden agenda. He was a symbol. For something many never get to say out loud, for black engineers, scientists, and creators, seen for their talent, but silenced for where they came from. Malik didn't vanish because he wasn't good enough. He vanished because he was too good. In a system never designed to protect people like him, and whether he's alive or not, whether he ever returns. The real question still lingers. If you invent something that could change the world, but the world isn't ready for you, would you still show up? Maybe, just maybe. The answer is still out there, broadcasting quietly, on a frequency only the silent can hear.